Right, let's see how this goes. Hi Majenko. Let's switch over to that one. Right. So one of the machines I want to look at today is relatively small. This is a quad-core Celeron Mini PC to the extent that Zotec actually call it the product name Mini PC. This was a firewall at a site. It's been replaced with a identical model, just with a newer version of software. So I want to clean this one up and reinstall it and get it working as a firewall, because this one is running in BIOS mode and it really needs to move up to UEFI. Hi Swamp. One of the weird things about this, like pretty much any mini PC, it comes with a VESA mount that clips into these four units. It's got a multicolour power button and power LED for telling you what it's doing. I've got USB 3 on the front on C, and got a HC and XC SD slot. Nothing on either side, it's just all vents. Then on the back, the one thing this has a superfluous number of for what I do with it is you have VGA, full-size DisplayPort, HDMI 1.4, and I run these headless normally. So you've got USB 2 with always-on power, 2 USB 3s, antenna for the internal Wi-Fi, and 2 gigabit NICs and power, of course. But when I got these were about £300 each, which for a twin gigabit machine was pretty good. The weird thing about them is the feet are the screws. There you go. So we've literally got rubberized screws with a Phillips cut in them. Which does make them a little weird. So the bottom detaches. We've got a thermal pad over the memory that is disintegrating, which, to be fair, in this temperature I can't blame it. I will probably leave that off. The other nice things about these, let's get rid of that before it gets stuck to everything. This one got quite hot. So you've got a M2, is it a B key for Wi-Fi with twin antennas, one of which is on board. Well, I say on board, it's in the case, and the other is a reverse SNA on the back. Twin RAM slots, which, as you can imagine, in a firewall mode, I really don't care about that much, because if I need more than 4 gig for a firewall, I think something's gone wrong. And then let's get some mini Phillips. They're really quite well designed for working on them, given that everything you normally want to get to is right on the top. So the drive plugs straight in. And you can see they've literally just put the SATA straight off the board for this to clip into. There is a switch here that I am not sure what it actually is. Just down there. There is a surface mounted button that I do not know what it's actually for. So Everything's looking good in here. So there'll be a slight bit of noise. Well, there's no real dust in it. Which one is this? I'd have to look up the data sheet. But very nice, a faint smell of propane here now. As you can see, the drive just got on a simple bracket. I was expecting more dust, I have to admit. This is what I use when I need a 2-port router, but heat is an issue. When I don't, I have a set that are passively cooled, which is less of an issue, and I also have the passively cooled ones with more NICs. So the passive ones come with 4 or 6 gigabit or 2.5 gig LAN adapters. Would help if I put it on the right way around. So. Let's see if the installer's going to be happy today. Put the screwdriver away before it wanders off. So we've got HDMI. A bit of power. Remember to bring a spare keyboard up. Look, me being smart. So this is its normal state, and technically this is off. If I hold it over there. There we go. So that is technically off. And that is on. So the LED goes from red to green when the actual unit powers up. Let's see if this cable... There we go. That's right. Why have we not got... Why have we not got video? I've got it. I know why. Let's... Why are we not seeing... That's not good. The issue at the moment is the Extron's only showing one output. So let's quickly shift to that one, and let's go and see what the Extron's thinking. Right, let's... Right, so I've got video output on both. I'm going to have to do a Magenko. There we go. There we go. There we got some video again. So for some reason, it wasn't outputting to the capture device. So there you go. So it's I don't know if it's going to tell us. Would help if I use the right keyboard. So it's twin gigabit networking. This is a... I'm trying to remember which processor it is, but we'll find out in a minute. There we go. So it's a 4100N. It's a fun one because it says it's a min speed of 800 and a max of 1100. It boosts to 2 gig, so this thing will quite happily handle, you know, gigabit wire speed without even blinking, especially with 4 cores. ACPI. That's not a problem. Make sure that's on pure EUFI. Grab the Zalman. 2.6, 272. We'll try 272 and then upgrade it. I used to have a lot more belly, Majenko. I lost almost 40 kilos without wanting to, and that's still quite worrying. Right, let's do an install. Standard key map, because it'll start confusing people if I configure the control key to be the caps lock. Going to use standard UEFI. Use a GUID. It's the fun of hoping it will boot properly, because it doesn't always. Of course, testing this is going to require me to knock up a cable, because this will need to go onto untrusted, which is over there, and I don't have a long enough network cable. It's FreeBSD based. This one's in the 4 family, so it's one of the newer ones. One of the biggest updates has been to shift up the version of BSD it's based on. But why would you want anything more complicated for a firewall? I mean, it's not like you're going to put a monitor on it most of the time. So I have brought up a little bit of cable. This is from the pile of end of a drum, and I haven't know what to do with it. What one is this? As this boots up. Okay, so this is GigaTrue 6 from Blackbox. We're going to mark the rating on it. Yeah, this is 550 megahertz cable, just to make life fun. So it's as high a spec as you can basically get on standard Cat 6. Let's cancel that. Let's see if it boots off its own disk. Well, that's a good start. I'm going to be lazy. I need to redo my rubbish bag. to be fair, Majenko, is there many things that didn't nick the BSD stack? No VLANs at the moment, so it's going to be RE0, RE1 for LAN. Proceed, yes. This is why I say I'm going to be lazy. There we go. Let's get the Zalman out of the way. Let's untwist us some pairs. I've actually had some fun like this with a guy I work with. He's actually the person who put PV array on my roof, and I gave his details to a customer who's about to move, and he's built a workshop and he wanted solar, well, PV. So I gave him my contact's details, and they've wired it in. The inverter and battery are in the workshop with the array on the roof, but it has to talk to the switch unit in the house, well, the garage really, but it's where the input circuits are, to control the changeover and the battery feed. And they've run a Cat5 cable, and it's about 45 meters, and Solar Edge, who make the equipment, says it should work up to 50, but it's not working properly. And so he contacted me and said, you know, does this sound right? And I said, well, possibly. It's not a network feed. I don't know what it's using for comms. But my first suggestion would be pull a piece of Cat6. And he said, why is that? I said, because Cat6 literally has more copper in the wire. And if it is a signal transmission issue, it might just be you need a better cable to get that distance across to the right unit and handle it. So, and then I had to warn him about watching out for what he buys, because of course half the Cat6 that's on the market at the moment is CCA, and if we're trying to get a decent signal, using CCA instead of actual copper is not actually going to help us in the argument for decent signal quality. This is going to go into Untrusted, which is running on a QD600, which is a wonderful little router. It looks like your standard domestic cable router. Gigabit input, 4 gigabit LAN, AX networking with 4 antennas with a different configuration of 2.5 and 5.8 across the 4 different antennas, depending on which frequency, depends on which antennas you've got actually live. But the thing that makes it really nice is QD provide a shim for OpenWRT. So you can buy this router, and they're about £60, put their shim on it, and put the latest WRT on it in one go. So you're 100% guaranteed there is none of the original manufacturer's code left on the machine. Which, for me, I feel that gives you a very secure test router. I actually used to have a Zotec Vigor on this. until the floor last year knocked it offline because they were literally knocking figure routers off left, right, and centre with a single bad packet. And this is my untrusted, and the other stuff that goes through it is the solar array. So the solar array is not connected to the main LAN. It goes through this QD. So I do like for Cat 6 these pull-through connectors. I'm not a fan of them for Cat 5 because a lot of Cat 5 doesn't. Their spec on Cat 5 is so loose for the diameter of the cable. It's very easy to get cable that doesn't go through, and sit in the right slots. Whereas as Cat 6 has a defined, it must be this diameter wire versus insulation. You don't have that problem. Right, I'm going to go and plug this in. Hold on. And now we hit the traditional question. Yes, that was plugged into LAN 0. One of the big problems with these is, although we've got twin network ports, they are not labelled. So it gets to be a bit of a pain when you actually plug in the LAN and the WAN, and it doesn't get a connection because you've plugged them in the wrong way around. It gets worse on my bigger ones because they have 6 unlabelled ports. Well, I've got one that's actually even worse because the ports are labelled 1 to 6. 1 to 6 on the device, and 0 to 5 in operating systems. Let's go for 9. So. Very much unlabelled port roulette, because with the bigger ones it's not so bad, because it's once you find one, you know which end is that. So if you find 5, you know the other end's 1. I do have one, however, with 4 ports. It's a pure deck server. The ports on the back are not in number order because it was built as a mini server. So it's designed to have one control port, one equivalent to what would have been IMPI, one, and then 2 network ports. So you'd have 4 ports along the back, and they put them in the order that made sense for wiring. This is not the order the adapters appear to a motherboard. So we should have the correct IP, although it has connected to Wi-Fi as well, so we'll kill that. There we go. Yes, potential security breach ahead, we know. Lots more beeps. Main pfsense setup. I'm just going to leave it as it is for now. Just check DNS I want to use. That was it. Got the wrong numbers. That'll do. I'll actually set it to. I don't normally bother with the actual time zone, but WAN interface on DHCP, that'll do fine because I'm not using anything else. Let's give it a right, let's let it reboot. Wait for it to come up. There we go. Don't care about that. Let's get some information, so let's have some traffic graphs. Film sensors. It's still reloading, that's why. There we go. This actually give us the main outputs I tend to have on the dump screen. If I'm doing site-to-site VPN, I'll have IPsec information added, and of course I'll add in OpenVPN if I'm using it for actual firewalling. So let's find the proper tabs for there we go. This should give us per core temperature sensing, and will enable the AES instructions in the board. I thought I selected a newer version than that. I thought I selected 272. Oh well. Right, let's pull it then. And see if this works, because this is the bit that normally breaks, is if you have to jump too many versions in one go, or more to the point, if you start from too old. So we'll just check what we're actually getting. I'm quite happy with that for double natting. The upstream should be the absolute max, because there we go. Yeah, because it's a much lower throughput. So 330 by 100 when you're going through two different NAT systems, it's not going to be as good as if I dump through it directly. So 163 packages to pull. The worst one we have to deal with from Magenco is Virgin. Because if you put a Virgin cable router into modem mode, you have to plug into socket 1 and you put your router behind it. But to access the Virgin router, it is locked to 192.168.100 subnet, which is my subnet. So I have the fun that we have it's not running at the moment because of IP changes, but we normally have a site-to-site IPsec VPN between here and Carex's office. And my internal IP range is the same as the range needed to access their modem on their Virgin connection. Now the VPN is running through the Zen connection, so the actual VPN itself never leaves Zen internet. It's going out from this system and then back into the Zen VDSL down there. And I want to fix this, but I can only fix this when OpenReach pull their asses out and put FTTP down in Carex's section of Birmingham, at which point I'll get them to dump the VMB connection and we'll just have 900 by 100 through the Virgin through the Zen connection, and it'll be a lot easier. One of the first Vodafone routers I used was someone asked me to look at their system, and the I can only assume that the Wi-Fi antenna cables were broken in it, because the signal strength from Wi-Fi petered off at about 4 meters, which makes even Virgin Super Hubs look good, and they're not. For the design of the early Virgin Super Hubs are impressive. They're cable modems. They're going to go near the TV because that's where the cable comes in, and they had a system with the worst Wi-Fi propagation ever. We're talking like a bungalow where you can't get a decent signal halfway down the living room because the television's blocking most of it. So I very rarely use the ISP's router. This is a good example. My backup link, my 30 by 10 radio link, should use a horrible little router which is sitting around here somewhere. And the engineer fitted it, and I said, how do I get my /29 through this? And they said, oh, we don't do it like that. And they admitted what the fault was and came out and shoved a PoE injector onto the masthead, and so the masthead acts as a point router rather than a natting router, just does standard route tabling, and I pull the IP addresses out on pfsense, so it plugs in. So literally on the back of the machine is a connector that big that is the built-in PoE injector, and so you've got the masthead on one side straight into the router on the other. Right, now we'll get a complete screen full because one of the advantages from Zen is if you don't use their router, which is Fritzbox, they will give you the password, wave goodbye to you, and you can use any SIP endpoint, which is what I've done at my mum's because I'm lazy. So mum has all the phones she's used to, and the only difference is that coming out the back of the NT5 is now the cable to downstairs, which is going into the it goes into a joiner which connects to a RJ11 cable that goes into the ATA, and that's it. The packages it has to upgrade, as you can tell from speed, are really, really big. Because as you can tell when it actually has to slow down and stop. I want to check a PlusNet connection of the customers, and I don't know if the best thing to do is to take one of the cooties out. Well, no, let me rephrase that. I'm going to take one of the cooties out as a test router, but do I take it out with a Vigor 130 VDSL bridge, or do I plug it in the back of the PlusNet router and just turn the PlusNet's Wi-Fi off? That's got us up to... Let's get to do a tech. Come on. Let's do it actually. Let the console do it. Yeah, the problem is the PlusNet router doing a VDSL is pretty crap. It's PlusNet are fully owned by BT, so the PlusNet router is actually the BT home hub, whatever version it is now, that has been modified to be PlusNet. So it's got a white casing instead of black, and the firmware is PlusNet centric, but it's not any better. It's not any worse, but PlusNet used to provide bog standard simple routers, and it would probably be easier just to let the Cootie do the whole lot. As it's got OpenWRT on it, it's going to do it a lot better than the BT code, and configuring it will be faster. I'm not saying the BT routers are particularly slow compared to like Virgin Superhubs, they're speedy. But when you have to click on something and wait for the device, 3 meters away on the end of a cable to respond, the code's a bit slow, shall we say. Yeah, I'm always a fan. I will VLAN stuff when I need it, but I'm much more a fan of just dumping the stuff out of different ports. One of the systems we do for a charity is they have a guest network, and all we've done is tell pfSense, yeah, you've got to take opt1, turn it into another system, give it its own DHCP server, and keep it as its own IP range. I hit this with the one I went to look at this morning, and I thought it had failed. And I'd need to do a complete reinstall. And it took a while, sat here for a while, and suddenly started booting again. It was like, oh. So, I will give this a little more time to see if it gets a bit happier. Well, that's not good. Let's see if it will be happier this time. We're down to 23 degrees in here at the moment. Can't check on that. The problem is it's crashing on the frame buffer. It could just be this particular version. Let's yeah, I don't. This doesn't have a serial port though. jump it a couple of versions. So go to that one. So I do actually have 272 actually on here, which would jump to 8 and 8.1. Do you think they put enough I2C interfaces on this, given it's got 7 controllers? That was a fun one. This was the change they made in the installer, and they had to take it out again, because one of the things it can't do is make a PPoE connector. So it has to check for a license over a connection. Let's try it. I don't really want to, but no, let's not cancel. Restart. Okay, install. Yeah. But this was a check they put in. Do you have a license for Plus? If not, we'll have we'll let you install the Community Edition. But if you were using PPPoE, you couldn't give it an internet connection for it to make that check. So it was impossible to install. Oh, let's go for 2.8. That's quite a handy thing. But it's like, why would you make a firewalling distribution reliant on an internet connection to install? You know, surely the whole point is it's your internet connection. You don't have one until you've got the firewall set up. But this is what Netgate did, and they got enough complaints they had to put up a straight CE version, and it still works, but this Salmon's got the older one on it. You know, you can understand it if it's something like Windows, Mac OS, anything like that, because they're not your internet connection. You can expect that you would have to have something working first. But to just say, no, you need to check with us before to find... And it wouldn't be so bad if they'd just put a menu option right at the start that said, I want to install the CE version. And it would just go, oh, then I don't have to do the license check. Never underestimate the stupidity of a big company. certificates. Yeah, this one always takes a little while to process. It just always makes you laugh that it's like, who thought this was a good idea? But there's actually a story on Not Always Right, well, Not Always Working, in the last couple of days, of a CFO who's been to a trade show and wants to install this new software, arranges a meeting with the CEO and a couple of other people, and the CEO's there like, why isn't anyone from IT here? And they're going, well, they will implement the decision we make. And the CEO's there like, let's get someone up, gets his PA, can you see if this IT tech's about, and if so, ask them to come in. And he comes in and says, we want to talk to you about the potential install of this software. And the story literally has the guy laughing. He's like, sorry, you were serious? It doesn't do any of the certification systems we need in this industry. We would have to write that from scratch, which means we couldn't store anything on the servers. This software would be running on for at least 2 months while we get that done. And then they went through all the things that their current software does for their industry that they need, and the new software doesn't. And it literally turned into, so is there anything else you want to talk to us in this meeting, or should we say, let's everyone have a good Friday afternoon and just cut it short here? I'm so glad it only has to do this certificate testing when the certificate package updates, because if it had to do this on boot, it would be a pain in the ass. There we go again. I really don't know why the certificate checks literally bog the machine down this far. That's interesting. I think I know what this is. And the question is it going to let me disable it, or am I going to have to pull the card, and will it still crash after that? I had this on another unit. It hits the Wi-Fi card and crashes the kernel because there's no firmware to run the driver. Question is, no, it doesn't. Right, let's do this the easy way. This didn't happen in the earlier versions because, quite simply, the BSD kernel at the time didn't have support for these cards, so it just ignored them. When we got support for the cards, it started causing issues. Come on. I don't know how they managed to get these in. There we go. There's the M2. This is a right pain when you're doing an upgrade on one of these and the Wi-Fi card suddenly causes the OS to hang after the upgrade. So, let's see if it works this time. I'm just watching to see the getting an output that it detects on the extra one. Come on. There it goes. Oh, what's it playing at this time? That's better. So what have we got? What did they actually use? I know it's an Intel one. Yeah. So I'll add that to a collection of spare Intel Wi-Fi cards. So quickly run through the leave that on. UTC this time rather than bothering to set it to BST. It's more the, because you don't normally use Wi-Fi directly on the firewall, why would you include the firmware for all those cards in the distribution? You're going to make the distribution a lot larger for you know what it does. I mean, let's face it, if you're going to use Wi-Fi with this, you're going to use separate access points, so no, we don't need that one. That would explain why it screwed that up. Let's OK that. Apply. That's one of the things I do like about pfSense. You make the changes and save them, but they don't apply until you tell them to, so you get a second chance to spot your screw-ups. So let's add in traffic graphs, thermal sensors. Just for fun, I'll add that one. Right, so we'll modify the oh, we've got some more options. I'll have to remember that. This doesn't have it, so it's not a problem. So what we should now get is the full set of temperature sensors instead of a system one. There you go. So we've got the 4 cores, individual sensors, and then the generic temperature sensor. We're getting NTP updates, that's quite happy. Let's now go to package manager, because there's 2 package I almost always install, which is this one, which gives you a rolling graph over like a month of all the interfaces and their input output stats. It takes a while to start collecting data because you need data to flow, but it's one of those really useful things where instead of looking at what's happening, you can look at the trends over time. And the other one I install is the client exporter for if I use OpenVPN, because it makes it so much easier getting machines set up if you get a firewall to spit out a personalised installer per user. So you get the client and all that user's certificates all wrapped up in one executable, which of course Windows then complains that it's never seen that executable before. Yeah, it's a custom one-off generated executable. There's only one copy of it, but it's obviously not to be trusted. But so that gives us totals, which I have to turn on. And then this will start to build up a graph of daily and monthly data for every interface. And if you've got 4 or 5 interfaces, if you take mine where you've got 1011 and LAN, and then the IPsec and the open VPNs, the graph is quite useful to tell if something's hammering the connection over time. So now this should think it's on the latest version. Yes, it is. So let's see if this is a bit happier with the newer code. So this is already a bit happier than the previous version of the code on this connection. So 439, so we've got a complete extra 100 meg just from the updates to the BSD code in the background. So that's great. This is why I don't really care about memory in them. This is using 15% of 4 gig. When it hammers, it might get up to 40%. So does it really matter? It's only got 4 gig of RAM. Let's see if that has actually started to populate yet. No. Right. I'll turn this one off. See if it turns off properly. This is one of the things I do like about how they designed pfSense. When it boots up, you will notice that the tones it generates scale up, and when you shut it down, they scale down, because it's designed to run headlessly. So it has audio cues for I'm booting up and ready, and I'm shutting down and disabling the connection. It's one of those, it seems sillily easy thoughts, but so many people don't think about it. How does a router communicate what it's actually doing? Well, it's a PC, it's got a speaker. Oh, this could run in 1 gig Swarm, but not once you've got, say, 5+ VPN users and you're running a site-to-site VPN in the background. To give you an idea, So you can see I'm using almost 800 meg on my main router. 9% of 8 gig. Hi Brenna. But you can see all the different internet connections in the graphs there. There's one missing because, as I said, I've got the VPN to Caraxes disabled at the moment. Well, Zen bugger about with IP addresses. So, to give you an idea, the top one is the 900 by 900. This WAN one is the 30 by 10. The WAN 6 is a Hurricane Networks tunnel over the 900 by 100. Oh, yeah, it's where's my mouse gone? There you go. So you can see same configuration as I set up originally. So I've got traffic graphs, but as you can see, this is my main 900 by 100. This is the 30 by 10. This is the IPv6. And at the moment, it's not displaying IPsec because that is temporarily disabled until the IP address is sorted out. And then it will reconnect and it won't care. But as you can see at the moment, this is running at, this is about 37 degrees. So 27 degrees on the main sensors, 26, 27 on the processors. This is slightly more powerful. This is an N100, and this is the one with this has 6 Intel 2.5 gig interfaces, and it should manage that at full speed. It's just only running on gigabit at the moment. I mean, it's only got a, for 30 by 10, it's only got 100 meg link, because what's the point of using gigabit for a 30 meg connection? But if I put the 2.5 gig switch in, this and the NAS would switch over to 2.5, but they're the only 2.5 devices actually connected at the moment. So is it really worth running those at 2.5 gig? If I ran another cable through, or if I ran the fibre through, I could then, for example, use the laptop I use for uploading the dashcam footage to the NAS. That would run on 2.5, and I get 2.5 to the NAS, and it would be quicker. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm actually going to use it more, because I only use it once every few months. Well, I say once every few months, every month and a half or so, when I'm dumping 280 gig, because I use 64 gig cards for the dash cams. So it's right, well, I'll pull these cables so I can actually get out, and then I'll figure out if there's anything else I want to look at today. I don't think there is at the moment, because it's all down to pinching some stuff off Simon and having another go at the 3010 and seeing if it's doing an actual boot up. But that's before someone in this area says, well, give it to me and I'll have a look at it, because I couldn't see Majenko saying that. Let's see if I can find, that's that one. Ah, that was interesting. I am trying to pull the power cable out from the HDMI cable. Because the only real disadvantage of this, which is fine for if using it in a desktop situation, is it has quite a lot of power supply cabling, which does seem a bit stupid when you consider that with the power cable they supplied with the power adapter actually is physically bigger than the computer, which does seem a bit stupid. So, you can tell the kitchen counter I use as a desktop when you hit it with something. But, it says that we even actually rated the fuse properly. It is actually a 5 amp fuse in this instead of a 13 like everyone else would do. Hi Matt. But yeah, it's like I said, they're a nice unit when everything's working, but finding machines that just work with multiple network interfaces just gets harder, because the manufacturers are sort of going, well, why do you need 2 network interfaces? And the answer is because I want to make a firewall out of it. Yeah, to give you an idea, this is 19 volts at 2.1 amps, so we're a full 40 watts power supply. Which again is one of the reasons I use these sort of systems for this sort of thing, is they're so low powered, no one really notices. You know, if I use my test pfsense mini server, that thing uses 120 watts to power up. It's like, I got it because it was cheap, I didn't get it because it was efficient. That one's also really annoying, that it's a one-use system and it has a VGA port, but the VGA port is on the motherboard. And you'd say, well, every VGA port's on the motherboard. The problem is, this one's vertical. It's literally a vertical mount DE15 pointing up at the underneath of the top of the case, and I haven't found an adapter small enough to turn it sideways to put a cable onto it and have a cable on it all the time, and it's the only video output on that machine, which is understandable because it was designed to be run over, remote management and serial. But I opened it up, found a VGA port, and went, whoa, I can install this. But once it's installed, you've got to take the lid off to get to all the controls. If I could program it properly, it would be a lot easier, because it has a status LCD on the front. So there's 2 or 3 buttons and a 2-line display. So for the sort of use it's actually designed for, it's not a problem, because all that configuration information you'd set on the front panel. So you'd set a IPMI address on that, and just hook in through the management port, and then does it really matter that it doesn't have a video output? The other silly thing about it, it uses the same SanDisk SATA module that's in Ben's Cisco terminal server, but it's just literally wired in. So it's stuck with Velcro to the inside of a case, and a standard SATA cable and power cable going over to it to run it. So I want to make that a slightly better system, probably bug Kitty to print me up a 2.5 inch or 3.5 inch drive adapter for that card, so it can be screwed into the case rather than just glued badly. But that's how it actually came from the people I bought it from. I got it to test higher speed networking because I have some 1U C-Lite servers that I use for firewalling, and they've got 2 Realtechs on board, and I put in a mini PCIe card that adapts mini PCIe to 2 gigabit Intels, and they were fine when I had VDSL. So I had, originally it was 80 by 20 and it dropped to 56 by 19 and the 30 by 10, and it was fine with that. But when I got the 900 by 100, one of the Realtek interfaces would just drop off. I'm sitting a bit further away from the mic, but one of the NICs would just drop off randomly. So you'd be doing stuff and suddenly bang, you've got no connectivity. And the NIC that would drop out is LAN. So it would take out my mail server and everything, but it would be accessible from the outside world, and the only way to fix it was to hard power it. Hence, I wanted a new machine to fix it. I bought this machine, and then the one I actually wanted turned up, and so I used that anyway. So this thing's been sat at the side waiting for me to fiddle with it, and one of the reasons I don't is the fact you've got to take the lid off to get screen output. So well, I think we'll call it there for now until I think of something else. And thank you everyone for joining, and I will see you around.